Hello, Bio20, and welcome to the video on cellular respiration, the introduction material. Just as a reminder, we're going to use this to help us remember a little bit from Science 10 before we jump into cellular respiration. So as a review, in Science 10, we learn about the membrane, so of the phospholipid bilayer, and you have a space in your notes to redraw this. So you're going to include the phospholipid bilayer, your channel protein, your carrier protein. You can put in the glycoproteins if you want. Just as a reminder to ourselves about what it looks like, because this is important, because as we talk about cellular respiration, we're going to talk about how we go across a membrane and how things are built up inside a membrane and then move out again. So we're looking at the ideas of osmosis and diffusion again. But again, just reminding ourselves, channel proteins open up so that things can pass through. These are just little small things that we can review from Science 10. Now, along with that is some key definitions to help us as we go through. So the first one is facilitated diffusion. So the idea of facilitated diffusion is that you have a molecule that is much too large to cross the membrane. The phospholipid bilayer is too big, too small, and the molecule cannot cross it. So we use facilitated diffusion. So that's an example of using that channel protein to help a larger molecule go across the membrane because that molecule can't do it on its own. We also have things that are active transports. Okay, so we are going to be talking about something called ATP synthase, and we're going to talk about some other ATP pieces. And so these are molecules that will move against a concentration gradient. And because they have to go against their concentration gradient, which isn't normal, they need to use active transport. So energy is from food, carbs, and glucose. And we're going to learn about that later on in our lessons around macromolecules. But what I really want to talk about mostly is energy. And so although autotrophs and heterotrophs are important to know, and you probably remember those from grade 7, hopefully, maybe not exactly in those terms, what I really want to jump over to is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So you have the adenine molecule, which you can see in blue on this picture, and then a ribose molecule, which is a type of sugar, right in the red, and then you have your 3 phosphates, which are attached to that ribose sugar. So there's 3 phosphates, so that is why we call it ATP, because of the triphosphate. Now, ATP has a ton of energy when it's in this form, but if it has less energy, we call it ADP, or adenosine diphosphate, because one of those phosphates gets lost and then we add it back on to energize it and can go back and forth. So if you want to think of it, this is the process that occurs, is it's like having a charged battery. As you use that charged battery, it loses energy, it releases energy, so then all of a sudden you have a dead battery and you need to recharge that battery. So when you lose energy from ATP, like I said, that bond breaks between 2 of the phosphates and the third. So in order to re-energize that process, we need to put on another phosphate. So again, we will see that later on as well when we talk about muscle contractions. So this is not in your notes, but it's just a quick reminder as it is a Science 10 concept, and we are going to get really into cellular respiration in the next little while. But what you're going to see here is that in the next couple chapters, we're going to take cellular respiration and we're going to compare it to photosynthesis. You learned these two things in Science 10. You learned their equations and just generally what they're about. Photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast. Cellular respiration happens in the mitochondria. But what you have to remember is that they are opposite processes. So when photosynthesis occurs in plants, when we take carbon dioxide, ATP, and water to make glucose and oxygen, cellular respiration uses that glucose and oxygen and then makes carbon dioxide, ATP, and water for the plant to use. Now, cellular respiration happens in all plants and animals, okay, and we're breaking down that chemical energy stored in bonds in making ATP. It happens in the mitochondria, and that's why we call the mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell. Photosynthesis, on the other hand, is trapping energy from the sun and taking it and making energy, specifically glucose. And this all happens in the chloroplast. So hopefully all of this kind of is a quick general review. ATP would be the only thing that is brand new to you guys, as we have never ever learned about ATP, but hopefully the little bit about the phospholipid bilayer with the 2 processes of facilitated diffusion and active diffusion, and then these processes here are a good reminder of some things we covered in Science 10. Have a great day.